Join me today as we explore Folsom Lake and imagine many of the old gold mining camps that were situated along the North Fork of the American River prior to the reservoir being built, and which are now covered up by the reservoir. So I'm out here on a pretty sunny day at Folsom Lake, southeast of Sacramento. It's a lot different than the last time I was out here, about a month and a half ago or so. It was very foggy, and the water was a lot lower in elevation at that time, so we've had a lot more rain and snow in the mountains, and the runoff is starting to collect in the lake, and I'm sure they're trying to hold it for a while to last for the spring and the summer. We begin today by driving around Dotton's Point. This is a relatively high ridge of land along the north side of the reservoir, and it extends southerly for a little ways above what was formerly the town of Carrollton. We will spend a little bit of time exploring this side of the lake, right where the North Fork and American River comes in, before heading on the other side of the river portion to an area where we can fly the drone and explore some of that area too. Most winters are pretty dry in this area of California, and unless we have a really rainy December and January, the water in the reservoir really drops to a low point where a lot of the shoreline is really exposed. So it's a good time of the year to explore and kind of enjoy the lake from a whole different perspective than just along the shoreline enjoying the water. These are just a few of the many gold mining camps that sprung up along the American River, both forks, in the 1850s, 1860s. You can see how many of those locations are completely covered by the reservoir today. This year was a little bit slightly less than normal in terms of rainfall and precipitation for a winter here. Most years, the water does drop down quite a bit, not as much as this. The winter of 2014-15, however, was at the very end of a number of drought years, and the reservoir actually dropped to the lowest it had been since it had been filled up in the mid to late 1950s. It dropped down to about 15% of the entire capacity, and many people were out exploring, looking for remnants of the old mining camps. One thing that may be surprising to many people is that at the time this reservoir was built and was filled up, the surrounding terrain and the area out here did not look in its natural state from before the mining activity. There was such an extensive amount of mining that occurred all along this river, all the way down to where Folsom Dam is now, past the town of Folsom into the city of Sacramento, that the ground pretty much was torn out by all the mining, hydraulic mining, and it looked a little different than probably what was the natural state was before the 1850s. This was later in the afternoon on a really pretty sunny day, few clouds, really caught the light, real nice here, actually going both ways, whether I was going west toward the sunset or east. Just a beautiful day out here, very clear. Here we are coming up on the north side of the North Fork of the American River, and you can see there's a couple sections here where the former mining camps on the other side of the river were located. One was the Condemned Bar, and the other was quite a bit in the distance, almost a mile and a half, is Dotton's Bar. Daughton's Bar at this point, my best guess at the water level on this day was probably about 125 to 150 feet deep below the current water surface. Anyone interested in more about what's hidden beneath the Folsom Lake Reservoir should check out this book, Hidden History Beneath Folsom Lake. It was written by a local insurance agent that lives in the area and has hiked many of these areas and studied them and researched the whole history out here. I found his book very invaluable. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. The further north we go up the North Fork of the American River, as the river actually narrowed in its natural course, there were some pretty steep sections down to the river. It wasn't just a casual shoreline like it is today. Another interesting aspect, when you look at the old maps from before the reservoir was built, and you see the confluence of where the North Fork and the South Fork of the American Rivers meet, just a little bit north of where Folsom Dam is today, there was a very steep canyon in that area referred to as Rattlesnake Point. Based on the contours and the old topo maps, it was over 100 foot deep in that area. And from what I read in some of the reports, especially in that book I previously mentioned, it was very difficult for the miners to get down into that area. If you're ever interested in a perspective of how steep that area was, drive along the road that parallels the top of the dam, and you can look west down the American River Canyon toward the town of Folsom, and you can see how steep the canyon is and very narrow walls in that area. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and travel quite a ways to get around to the other side of the North Fork of the American River and visit the Peninsula Campground and boat launch ramp in that area. It's kind of a cool little high ground, almost an island, so to speak, that you can drive out to, looking back towards where we were previously driving. And I'm going to fly the drone around this area. It's kind of pretty. Looking north here over the river, we're a little bit closer to the former location of Daughton's Bar, completely inundated by the reservoir now. There wasn't much of a breeze or wind blowing today at all. And you can see that in the water. There's a little bit of rippling in the water, but it was just gorgeous. The reflections of the sky in the water surface. It's not often you encounter such a large reservoir this calm like this. Now we're heading a little bit more southerly in the direction of the general location of where the former condemned bar was. That was one of the smaller mining camps in the area, probably actually grew to a few hundred people at one time. But there's not a lot more about this that's covered in any of the history. They covered more about some of the other mining camps. I'm turning down here now toward where a creek empties into the reservoir. It's a beautiful area. That's Rattlesnake Road, heading out toward the Peninsula Campground. Wait, that was cool. Looked like something that was just below the surface of the water there. I'm going to swing back around and take a little bit closer look at that. Yeah, there was. It's a former older bridge from probably when the road was there from the 1950s before the reservoir was built. That's really cool to see. I didn't think the water was low enough at this point this year to actually see any of the remnants of the old construction, the old structures in this area. Here we are flying north again, heading out over this high ridge of land towards the river and upriver from here. It's kind of a beautiful area. It really is. I can see why people really like this and why it's a state park now. Well, thank you for joining me today on this adventure. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you tune in to some of my other videos. Take care.